Hello and welcome back to Modern World History with yours truly, Dustin Fowler. Today we're going to talk about the Mughal Empire. So we've been talking about Muslim empires, and we've been looking at the Mediterranean. You've got the Ottoman Empire. In Persia, you've got the Safavid Empire. And here we are today, we're going to look at the Mughal Empire in India. So let's get started with that. So I wanted to say, as early as the 700s, Muslims had been kind of teetering along the edges of northwestern India. So they really didn't go much further than the Indus Valley at that time. But by around 1000, and when I say this, I mean 1000 AD. Alright, so by 1000 AD, you've got Muslim Turks invading India and going more deeply into it. And they wrecked it. What I mean by this is that they're going in and they're tearing down Hindu temples and really just generally giving the people living in that region kind of a hard time. They were led by a man who was named Sultan Mahmud, and these I guess kingdoms or I guess territories that they established were known as the Delhi Sultanate. And Delhi here would have been kind of like the capital of this empire, if you will. Now, we're not quite to the Mughals yet, but we're getting there. Now, to be clear, this wasn't really a united empire. So these were, like I just now mentioned, local areas kind of governed and ruled by these powerful Turkish warlords. Now, one of these Turkish warlords was a man named Timur the Lame, all right, and he goes in and destroys Delhi. He destroys Delhi. Now, it wouldn't be until almost the year 1500. So by about 1494, there is going to be a young child, an 11-year-old boy named Babur, who is going to inherit the empire. And Babur actually is going to unify. He's going to unify the different territories that make up the Delhi Sultanate, and he's going to be the founder of an actual empire. And at this point, we really are kind of looking at the foundation of the Mughal Empire. So he was a really good general, and he governed very well and extended the territory that was under the possession of the empire. But his son was quite incompetent, and his son would have been the heir to the throne. Alright, so he wasn't a really good leader, and he ends up losing a lot of land that was gained. But Babur's grandson, Akbar, is going to be the ruler during really what we're going to consider the golden age of the Mughal Empire. And so we're going to kind of slow down here and talk a little bit about Akbar's golden age. Now, Akbar governed from 1556 to 1605. Now, that's really a pretty good time for one leader to be in control. He was a military conqueror, and he felt like the best way to be able to conquer more territory and the best way to hold on to that is through power. And he equated power with great artillery and strategy with using artillery. So when we talk about artillery, we are talking about guns, alright? Guns equal artillery. And back then in the 1500s, these guns would have been things such as cannon. Now, another thing that he did was when he took over territories, he treated conquered people as part of, his people. He didn't treat them as conquered individuals and take away rights and things like this. He made it so that conquered people could rise up the ranks and become officers in the army or in the military. And he helped to unify the land that he conquered in a way that prevented people from going back and taking over, or I guess trying to rebel and take over lands later on. He also was religiously tolerant. A lot of times you hear about some of these Muslim empires that came into power. They took away the rights of other religious groups or made them pay a tax if they wanted to continue to worship their religion. Well, Akbar removed these things and was very religiously tolerant. He also took Hindu wives and had Christian teachers who would teach his children and things of that nature. Anyone could hold office in the bureaucracy. Now, when we talk about this word bureaucracy, I'm not sure if we've mentioned this before, but this word right here means the people that are going to help to do the day day-to-day tasks of the government. Day-to-day tasks. In the United States right now, one of the day-to-day tasks of the government is to deliver the mail. So the mail is a part of the post office, is a part of the government bureaucracy. He also imposed a fair tax system. And when we say fair tax system, it was somewhat of a tiered system, right? So somewhat of a tiered system, which is similar to what we have here. So that the poor don't end up paying a huge percentage of their taxes towards, or of their income towards taxes, but rather richer people are going to pay more of that because they can afford it. I mean, 30% of a millionaire's income is more than 100% of my current income as a lowly teacher. But here's the problem. When officials under Akbar's rule died, their land was reclaimed, meaning that there's no inheritance. Now, this here is kind of a big deal. If you look at basically any kind of a empire throughout history that we would have studied so far, the inheritance would have been a big expectation of the power-holding nobility. But if there's no chance of this, well, maybe they don't feel like doing a great job is completely warranted or completely necessary for their position. So this is going to lead a lot of people to have problems with Akbar's rule. Now, one of the cool things about the cultural tolerance that was kind of initiated by Akbar during his rule is that it's going to lead to new language and art and new kind of this is part of the idea behind the cultural golden age, is that people can learn far more about people by interacting with people of different types of cultures. They can learn new kinds of science, new kinds of literature, new kinds of medicine or technology. And art and language in this case was no different. So the high society, in other words, the king's court, they spoke Persian. All right, so Persian is different. It's not the same as Arabic. It's not the same as Hindi. The people of India, primarily even today, are going to speak Hindi. All right, it is an Indo-European language that is primarily spoken today in India. And then there's also Urdu, which is spoken by the soldiers or the soldier class during the time, and it's somewhat of a mix between Arabic, Persian, and Hindi. It's got a little bit of influences from all these areas, and today Urdu is actually the official language spoken in Pakistan, which you can see is this country right here. Now, Pakistan, we're going to talk about later on, was part of a partition of the Indian subcontinent whenever the British left, and it is a Muslim country. So you can kind of see that these cultural differences still exist today in the area, and they kind of got their start during this period. Now, there's also the cultural blending that we're seeing here could also be seen in art and architecture during Akbar's reign. All right. And one good example of this would have been during the reign of Jahangir. Now, I know I'm going to mispronounce the mess. I have many other names here. This guy here is Jahangir, and this person's name is Nur Jahan. And Jahangir would have been the king or the emperor. He would have been Akbar's successor. But he was kind of a weak leader. He didn't have the ability to kind of reign in his kingdom in the same way that Akbar did, and he relied more so on Nur Jahan, who was kind of the one who's calling the shots. So Jahangir would have been the emperor, but Nur Jahan was in fact the one with the power. And she liked having that power and wished to keep that power. So, liked having power. Now, here's the thing about this, is that she ruled somewhat with an iron fist, and she saw the opportunity for her to maintain power would have been through their son, alright, not necessarily their firstborn, but their son, Khusrau. Again, I probably mispronounced that, I'm sorry if I did, but he was the son who Nur Jahan preferred to be in line for the throne. Problem is, he ends up rebelling, and Nur Jahan could not have that, and so she has him killed. All right. Now, here's another thing: is that these people that live here in the Punjab region, all right, they're known as the Sikhs. All right, so just a little bit of trivia today. Sikhism is the fifth largest religion in the world in terms of adherents. Now, they don't have nearly as many adherents in Sikhism as the next largest religion, which is Buddhism, which has almost 1 billion adherents in the world. But Sikhism is number 5 in terms of the fifth biggest religion in terms of the adherents, but almost all of them live right here in this region known as the Punjab province. And that's where their holy site, the Golden Temple of Amritsar, is. And their guru, which is kind of like the Pope figure for their religion, Guru Arjun, at the time, protected Khusrau and was killed for that. So we're going to see where the Sikhs kind of are going to be at odds with some of the Mughal leaders and some of the Indian leaders in general from this point on. And they're actually going to become a warrior class of people over time due to some of these persecutions. I actually didn't realize that I had my little note listed here about Sikhism being the fifth largest religion, but I do. So that brings us to Shah Jahan. All right, so Shah Jahan was another son of Jahangir, and Shah Jahan came to power and was kind of paranoid about people trying to compete with him. So anyone that was able to rival him, such as his own children maybe, or his siblings, he would have had them assassinated. So that's kind of a bad feature or I guess a bad characteristic of a leader, is anyone who's going to take out what could potentially be good leadership in the future, or I guess one who would succeed you with good leadership. That's really not a good trait. That's part of what brought down the Ottomans and the Safavids that we discussed earlier in the course. Now, Shah Jahan loved his wife, and even though this was an arranged marriage, he truly and honestly fell in deep love with her. Had a million kids. I want to say they had 14 children, 13, 14 children, something like that. That's about 12 too many for me. But when she died, he loved her so much, he honored her with the construction of this building, the Taj Mahal. You guys are using the Patterns of Interaction textbook, then it is on the cover of your textbook. And he wanted this building to be as beautiful as she was beautiful. And I think in many ways, perhaps, he may have pulled that off. And so you can see that the influences of all these different groups are really shown very well through this particular piece of architecture, a fantastic structure. Shah Jahan's building projects, however, including the Taj Mahal and many other things, really expelled major problems for the Mughal Empire, though. So it resulted in heavy taxes and also famine, and heavy taxes together made it really, really difficult for peasants, which would have made the vast majority of the people. Now, usually landholders are super rich and control most of the politics, but if enough peasants get frustrated or get upset, they start to rebel and they start to try to fight for better social and economic conditions, and you're going to start to see that happen. So, I know I'm going to mispronounce this. Aurangzeb is one of the 3 children of Shah Jahan. And he ends up, once Shah Jahan gets sick and is somewhat incapable of being leader, his sons see this as an opportunity to overthrow him. And they start to fight a civil war against one another. And Aurangzeb ends up beating out his brothers and overthrew Shah Jahan and put him in jail. And so, at the time of Aurangzeb, the empire was at the largest extent it's going to be. Alright, but the problem is, he was not like Akbar. Alright, so he was oppressive. He was mean. He was oppressive. He oppressed his people. He also reinstituted the hated Muslim tax. Alright. He did not allow Hindus to have high positions, and he destroyed many Hindu temples again. So it's like all of the tolerance that existed under Akbar and prior to this had been kind of eradicated, and it really made a lot of the people unhappy. And so they end up resisting. The Sikhs, as I just mentioned, become warlords in the Punjab region, and they kind of resist and fight against the Mughals. the Hindus rebelled because of the high taxes, and there was a particular group of Hindus known as the Marathas, who established a state, that opposed the Mughal leader. And so eventually the Marathas were fought and they were defeated. But the problem here is that as the emperor weakened, local lords continued to gain power in the region. And eventually you're going to have all these different warring states. There's going to be complete discord. There's going to be problems everywhere. The emperor really has no power. The emperor later on down the line is going to be more of a figurehead, meaning that he exists and he is recognized as the emperor, but that recognition doesn't actually constitute itself in the form of any kind of real political power. So local warlords are going to start calling the shots. At this point, you could say that really the Mughals are done, as more and more Europeans began to enter the scene and dominate and control the political situation. And as we will see when we start to see the influences from the British and Dutch and other groups of people in the years to come. So, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.